All right, everyone, welcome in to episode 16 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. As always, I'm Nicholas Hill, live here from Chattanooga, Tennessee, the United States. And joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, in Brazil is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing here on this Wednesday evening?
Doing good, doing good. Very hot weather, very nice weather. You're doing good, doing good. Another show post Super Bowl. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Rams. First of all, what a title. We're gonna definitely discuss more about that. But congratulations to them winning at home, and what a game that was.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely the end of a long NFL season, a very exciting NFL season. We'll definitely break down how the Rams were able to pull off their first Super Bowl since 1999, how the Bengals came up short in their quest for their first ever Super Bowl, and, where we go from now here in the American sports calendar. Because, it's kind of interesting because, obviously, in the Brazilian sports calendar, it's soccer, soccer, and soccer. But in the American sports calendar, we actually we flip around, right? So we're going to start talking more about some basketball, some hockey. Hopefully, we got some baseball to talk about. But
Hopefully,
well, we'll have some college basketball to at least talk about. The baseballs are back this weekend, and hopefully Tony Vitello and the boys will make another run at Omaha, because those guys are very fun to watch and they have a lot of talent returning. But let's hope that's not the only baseball we get to watch. I'd like to watch the reigning World Series play some games this year. But, if we have to be the reigning World Series champions for 2 years, is that really a bad thing?
is it? Yeah, that's true. I mean, if there's no season, the Braves still the current world champions.
Right. Hey, if there's never ever another game of MLB, reigning world champions for the rest of time. No, I want to see more.
You
Games.
want a back to back. You'd rather have back to backs.
Right. I want to win every one, not just win one and then it never season or it's season to exist. But and the topic of champions, that's where we're going to start tonight in terms of our kind of, I guess, breakdown of the Super Bowl, because a lot of the talk about the Rams in this Super Bowl is how much they invested in this team. They had to get into all of these free agency features. You bring in a guy like Odell Beckham, bring in a guy like Von Miller. You traded for Matthew Stafford. A lot of this team was a team they didn't draft. It's a team they had to go out and get. And it's really one of the first instances of an NFL team really being able to go out and build their team from outside the draft. Because a lot of times in NFL, because there's so many positions and it's so intricate and complicated, the core of your team has to be guys that you drafted. But a lot of this team was the polar opposite. I mean, it was guys they brought up in addition to the guys I mentioned. Andrew Whitworth was a guy they signed a couple of years ago. Eric Weddle was a guy they signed in the middle of this season. So, and we have to keep in mind, too, that the NFL is a league with a salary cap. What about some of these other leagues that don't really have one, like the MLB, the NBA?
Or even Brazilian soccer or international soccer.
Right. Soccer, I think it's the absolute worst because you have teams like, for example, in the EPL, you have Manchester United and Tottenham and all those teams that can really spend whatever they want.
Look at the discrepancy, like, in European soccer. Today, in the round of 32, in the the knockouts of Champions League, Manchester City beat Sporting in Portugal 5-0. Look how the discrepancy in money there is. It's the top teams in Europe in the knockout stage, and there's a huge gap, of course, with a lot of money involved.
Right. And that's what honestly kind of ruins European soccer to me, even though the top levels of it are extremely entertaining. There's just no parity. I know Leicester City won the title a couple years ago, but that was once in a blue moon. You have to go back to Blackburn Rovers in the early 90s to see another team in that similar position.
You had Alan Shearer, which was a premier player, like a top level player back then. But
right,
still,
but that team wasn't like the teams of now, with multiple international superstars on them. It isn't like the Barcelonas and Real Madrids of what they were like 6-7 years ago. I mean, those teams that were helmed by Messi and by Ronaldo were just unbelievable. I mean, they were better than the majority of international soccer teams.
Yeah, like with all the concentration in money in a few teams, they basically build soccer teams that are better than you know a whole country. Like now, you don't have to wait until the World Cup to see the best players getting together. You see them now playing the EPL in the Champions League. But in the American soccer, of course, there's a whole difference between their own leagues. Like the MLB, it's a wild west. It's no salary cap, so basically the Yankees or even the Astros can go buy, or even the Dodgers can go and buy the best players and get the championships. But the NFL, I feel like the Rams, they were, I think, aggressive on trades, because in the NFL you have to really get good trades because of the salary cap. You have to really be a smart trader better than a buyer.
Right. And that's the beauty of the NFL, because everyone could be like, oh, the Rams about to win to a title. Well, there's no guarantee any of those pieces were going to work. Like, Odell Beckham looked like he was beyond his peak in Cleveland. The fact that he was able to come to Los Angeles and really be productive was more about the Rams being able to use him correctly. Von Miller, he was starting to fall off a little bit. But then again, he was able to be resuscitated in Los Angeles. Eric Weddle was retired and came back and played solid minutes for them. That give credit to the Los Angeles Rams for being able to use the talent they were able to bring in to make them good. I mean, Matthew Stafford had never won a playoff game before this year. You got to have the talent in the first place to win anything. But what you do with that talent is super, super important. Which is why money doesn't always buy a
And
championship.
the thing is, you really need to have a good core coaches, like in the NFL or even in soccer. You need to have a really good coach, because it doesn't matter. For example, Corinthians went ahead and buy several key experienced, really good players for their roster, and they got better. But the coach still didn't convince, and they fired the coach because the team couldn't produce the way the front office expected. Uh, but they went ahead because they went ahead and invested a lot of money. They got a lot of key players. So when you have a better roster, you expect even more from your head coach, from your coach. But I feel like Sean McVay, he was aggressive on trades because he trusts himself to bring this team back to the Super Bowl, because as we discussed, I feel like last week, and you probably discussed a lot during the other NFL shows, Jared Goff wasn't a bad quarterback, but he was a little bit above average. Like he went to a Super Bowl, but he couldn't be the extra level. A guy who be clutch on clutch play like Matthew Stafford was with Cooper Cup.
Oh, absolutely, and that was a significant detriment to the Rams, because he just wasn't able to elevate them. In many ways, he's kind of like Ryan Tannehill has been for the Titans, where like good in the regular season, but he's not going to get you over the hump in the playoffs. And sometimes you got to make the move, but you can't really just go out and sign someone because of the salary cap. Like with Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be fascinating to see who's willing to go get him, because a lot of teams don't have that space for him. And Aaron Rodgers isn't exactly the guy that's going to take a pay cut to go somewhere like Tom Brady was willing to do with Tampa. And, it's kind of that relationship, right? Because every player wants to maximize their profitability, because, they're sacrificing so much. They could have long-term health effects from the game that they love to play. Who knows what they're going to be able to do after the game. So it's up to the players, right, to want to maximize their profitability. And the teams are going to remember their businesses as well. So they want to maximize their profitability. But at the same time, to be profitable, you got to be successful. And just really having to balance all of these desires is what makes the off seasons of these sports so fascinating, because, you want to go all in to win a title, but you can't do it at the risk of putting yourself in a bad financial position.
Yes, I mean, that's what everybody's talking about with Corinthians now, because Corinthians has a 1 billion reais in debt, not even considering the debt because of their stadium. there was built because of the World Cup, and there was through a construction company, there was a lot of issues with corruption and stuff, but still only with their on the field kind of thing ish. They have a $1 billion in debt, but they went ahead and got five players that were very experienced and very expensive kind of players. And as of right now, Corinthians, they're looks a good soccer team. They want to build up an attractive team so they can win championships and attract fans, but that can come with a cost for the long term. With all the issues with financial issues they have. And shout out to my man Bruno Slonik watching from Sorocaba. He was just covering a big soccer game, big win for Kings de Piracicaba, 2-1 versus São Bento in the second division of the São Paulo State tournament, which is one of the most hard tournaments ever in the world to win.
That was the team I commented on there, right? Piracicaba.
Yeah. I was broadcasting on Saturday, and by the way, they have a call Porto Street, the best fish food ever.
Right.
Ever. There's no better place to eat like fish food, like a good salmon, a good fish, than the Porto Street in Piracicaba. I guarantee you.
I did look it up. I look it up, and I felt like it's a Wikipedia article. So it's a town. So
yeah,
so definitely definitely it's a lovely place.
But back to championships. I feel like it's the risk and reward because, and also when you, for example, in Brazil, when you have a big sponsor like Palmeiras, Palmeiras has a sponsor, is sponsored by a bank and an education conglomerate that gives millions and millions of reais. Of course, you ended up being on the top team. You ended up getting titles, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to be smart investing that money, because when Palmeiras was started, sponsorship in 2016, they didn't win much titles then. There wasn't much success. So because I feel like they weren't getting the better players, but now they're smart. They're investing in their academy. They're getting key players for key positions. So it doesn't matter if you have a lot of money if you don't know how to get the key players.
Right, because then you're just going to blow all the money. It's like having $1 million to be able to blow on sports gambling, but you're going to bet on Vanderbilt football to win an SEC football game. It's just something crazy like that.
I mean, you might get one or two right, but in the long run, you won't get it. It's like you might get one or two players that will be good, but if you don't get like a good scouting, you definitely won't build a roster that can win championships.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've noticed too. It feels like a lot of times when you get these big time owners of all this money, because they think because they've been so successful in other industries, they come into their sports industry, owning a team, and think they can do it just as well as the people who have been here for a long time. So they meddle. Like I think of like a Jerry Jones, for example, someone who has to insert himself in every single decision the Dallas Cowboys have to make. And that's what, to me, is holding their program back, because they bring in capable people. But because Jerry Jones is so hands-on, there's been times where they have to basically say no. Because, like, for example, in the 2015 draft, Jerry Jones wanted to draft Johnny Manziel with their first round pick. And it took the GM to basically sternly tell him no. And they went and drafted Zach Martin instead, who's been a very good offensive lineman for them. But that hasn't always happened.
And I feel like one person that Jerry Jones could really learn from is current Palmeiras president and the head of the Crefisa group, Leila Pereira. She was practically Palmeiras owner right now, not officially, but she became the president, and she is the head of the group that sponsors Palmeiras. But she doesn't meddle in soccer. She doesn't meddle who Palmeiras is going to hire, who Palmeiras is going to fire. That's the GM. That's the coach. She only helps with the financial part of it, and it has been really successful. Palmeiras, 2 South America championships, just lost. We're going to talk about that final game they lost on Saturday, the FIFA Club World Cup. But but she runs very successful because I feel like she doesn't want to medal. And it was funny that she only is in that position because her husband is such a diehard Palmeiras fan that she wants her to kind of control that part because he knows that he will be a fan more than a administrator.
Yeah, and that's really what's smart. Because to me, like the most optimistic, the most ideal owner is someone who's able to front the money that's necessary, but then realizes I'm not smart enough to make true decisions here. So you hire a GM you trust and let them make the decisions. I think of someone like a Steve Ballmer, for example, with the Clippers. I think he's been a very good example of this, where he brings a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. But as far as I am aware, he doesn't make any basketball decisions. He puts the money up, he riles up the fan base, makes them excited, and he just kind of is there. He doesn't make true decisions. He lets the basketball guys do that. And that's what you got to do. Like Robert Kraft for the Patriots is a huge example of this. He's always stayed out of the way in New England. He
And I feel
lets,
like the only time that he
yeah,
meddled, I think it didn't end well with the Brady Garoppolo
right,
situation. Because
yeah. But
I
even
feel
then,
like
Garoppolo in the long run has turned out not to be like an amazing QB. Like he's not terrible, but he's kind of like a Jared Goff, right? Tannehill type of QB.
no, I was gonna say I feel like definitely Garoppolo would have been the perfect QB for the Patriots system in the long run. I feel like he's a very quarterback system kind of you know player. So I feel like uh, Bill Belichick knew what he was doing, but of course, kind of Brady situation took over, and the relationship he built with Kraft, it was the owner meddling with a favorite player. In the long run, I think it doesn't went badly because I think Belichick got over it and he's trying to rebuild. But I still feel like that was a meddling that it was kind of shaky.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that certainly is a scenario where there probably was at least a little bit of man. Like, because Belichick, I think, wanted to move on from him around 2017 ish, but Kraft wasn't ready to move on from him because Herbert Kraft and Tom Brady had a tight relationship. And, Belichick is always going to be a do whatever it takes to win football games, like, regardless of the human cost. And I think that did drive a little bit of a wedge in their relationship because even in last year when the Bucks and the Patriots played, you could tell there was still some animosity there between Brady and Belichick. But I guess kind of like bringing this back around to the money aspect, I do think the one that we have to remember is money doesn't buy intelligence. You have all the money in the world, but if you go out and spend $100 million on the worst quarterback ever, and you aren't going to win a single game. So you have to be able to make smart decisions even with the money. And then if you don't have the money, like say you're like the Oakland Athletics, sorry to my former roommate Nick, huge Oakland A's fan. You got to be creative. You got to get around the fact your limitations. And one of the ways they were able to do that was Moneyball. They were able to come up with all these advanced analytics. They were able to find, okay, what do these certain things do these players do that isn't on a traditional stat sheet that could potentially help us win ball games? And it was just obscure stats, really, really nerdy stuff. And that's how the Oakland A's were able to turn around their organization and win several division titles, was because of Moneyball. But they've never been able to win a World Series because they truly just haven't been able to put up the type of talent that they needed to do that. But they've been able to be competitive with Moneyball. So, and baseball really is the one area sport that you can really do that with. I'm not as familiar with hockey. I'm not sure how much that's infiltrated into that. Football, just because of the sheer amount of people that's required to be on a team and the salary cap, advanced analytics are there, certainly, but I don't think it's as much of an influence as baseball. And basketball, I think it has a place, I'd say, as well, especially in terms of shot selection and effective field goal percentage and all of that. And there's really some organizations that probably should be using it more than they are using it. I'm looking at you, Sacramento Kings.
But yeah, like when you try to use stats or even kind of analytics to bring the best players, of course you still need clutch players. Like as Colin Cowherd says, there's analytics and manalytics, like players that can be decisive on big games or big clutch moments. That's something I think it's hard to quantify. I feel like that was the trade that got the Super Bowl with, you know, Sean McVay. He won manalytics, not only analytics, when he got, Matthew Stafford trade to Jared Goff was somebody he can, go all in the playoffs.
Yeah. And that's what it takes because analytics only get you so far. Analytics will get you for an 18-week season, but they're not going to get you for a one-off game in the playoffs. And and I really like how Cowherd put that. It's manalytics, not analytics. And once again, money can't buy that evaluation. Like, money can't buy you a lot of things. I mean, money can buy you a lot of things, but the most important things it can't buy.
And I feel like it applies to soccer too. Of course, you do a lot of scouting and you try to, bring the players that can be valuable for your team. But at the end, you want to bring players that you can count on in big moments. Players that can, be, especially in soccer where uh, a, a different player, like a Neymar kind of player, like a player that can make a difference in one play, in one dribble, in one moment, can be the defining moment of your season.
Right. You have to look at what the impact is going to be. Can they get the job done in the clutch moments? Because they may not do well throughout majority parts of the game, but they can come in and be your closer. And that provides infinite value to your team that not even advanced analytics can bring. So it's just all about figuring out the pieces to your team. And I feel like in a way this almost applies to even like a team like the Vols, the Tennessee basketball team that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, with how they have started. They really figured out how each player fits within the full context of the team and how each player, has a piece in helping the Vols win games, including big ones.
Yeah, like when you try to put a lot of do it like your schematics or try to fit in players within one starting lineup. I feel like great example the Vols or even the Rams. Finding back Odell Beckham Jr., Von Miller throughout the season, and they all fit in greatly throughout the season, and the team ended up being champions. It just show it's not about getting really good players. It's about getting the right players for your needs. Like I feel like the Dallas Cowboys don't approach in this way. I feel like they get the players that they love, but not the players that they need.
I would say so, yeah. They always want the big star power. They want the headlines. They want to win a trade deadline. They want to win the NFL draft. But sometimes the not most obvious move is the best move. And I feel like the Cowboys at some point need to learn that again. Because a lot of guys that got in the past in the 80s, they weren't the biggest stars ever coming into the Cowboys. But because of their success, they were able to win.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's a matter of not having a lot of money, but having people that can use the money wisely to get the players that can give you a championship. And, it was a big contract this Super Bowl with, the Rams and Bengals way. And there's no, of course, you see that because of the Rams one, oh, the Rams is the right way. If Cooper Cup did not catch that pass, it would have been the Bengals winning the Super Bowl. So I feel like it's more like both ways can win, like through the draft or through trades.
Yeah. I mean, as we've seen with the Rams, there's so many ways that you can build a championship winning roster. And there's no wrong way to do it. But I think those are those that are going to have long-term success. Because me with the Rams, and I guess we can kind of just begin to merge this with just talk of the Super Bowl in general, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. at least when it comes to the Rams, right? This was always the goal, to win a Super Bowl or two, when this iron is hot. Because at some point, you're not going to be able to keep all these guys, and you're not going to have draft picks for a while, at least good ones. And your team's kind of going to fall apart in a couple of years because of all the moves you made right now. But it worked. You went for now, and it worked. This is exactly what the Packers were trying to do. And unlike the Packers, it worked for the Los Angeles Rams. So, just kind of, if you didn't see the game, which, to be honest, I don't know who and who's listening to the podcast didn't see the game, but it was a defensive game, back and forth. Los Angeles seemed like they were going to control the game early. Cincinnati, through some turnovers, were able to get their way back into the game, took the lead in the third quarter. But, after multiple punts back and forth, the Rams defensive line took over the game. Aaron Donald was a man on a mission. Joe Burrow got sacked 7 times throughout the game. And Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp linked together multiple times in the final drive. On a drive where they didn't have Odell Beckham because he had torn his ACL earlier in the first half. And Super Bowl MVP Cooper Kupp scored the game-winning touchdown with 1:50 left. And even though the Bengals had a nice drive going, they came up short after having a 2nd and 1 over midfield. So when you look at this game, I mean, to me, we talked about last week the mismatch between the Rams defensive line and the Bengals offensive line. And that, to me, is what was the decisive factor. That's why the Rams won this game, is because Aaron Donald and Von Miller were unguardable by this offensive line of the Bengals. They got totally ripped apart in that second half. Joe Burrow did not have a lot of shots to really get stuff going throughout that half. And, that was the difference between breaking a long championship drought and winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I feel like it was a very tough game. Definitely, it looked like the Bengals was going to win the way they started the second half, the momentum they have. But I feel like the Rams was built to win the way they did, because of the way they won against the Buccaneers and the 49ers. It was turmoil during the game, but in the end, they always figure out the way how to win. And I feel like that was the story of the Rams throughout the postseason, and they just finish up in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and in many ways, it kind of felt like some of the other Bengals playoff games. They got behind early, stormed back to take a lead, but they just, the only difference really between those games and this one was the Bengals defense, which had played so well throughout the postseason, couldn't get one last stop. And you just have to credit Cooper Kupp really for that. I mean, what he was able to do in that last drive was incredible. And really Matthew Stafford as well, because he kind of struggled throughout portions of that game. He looked amazing early on, threw 2 early touchdowns and was on fire. But after Odell went down, he was really struggling, because just like for all the talk of the Rams defensive line, we have to give credit to the Bengals too. Like, the Bengals defensive line really showed up throughout this entire postseason, and they were getting after Matthew Stafford in this game. The linebacker core, I thought, played very well, and they really showed out, and they really proved that they are better than what they were built to be. But unfortunately, on that last drive, you just had the best wide receiver quarterback connection potentially in the NFL between Stafford and Kupp. That was just too much to overcome for that defense. And sometimes you get a magical connection like that can take you across the finish line. And that combined with what the Rams were able to do on the defensive side of the ball with their front seven was really that decisive. Because what's interesting to me here is the Bengals didn't turn over the ball in this game. They had 0 turnovers. Now, they had 2 missed 4th downs, which, some people say, well, that's really a turnover, which, yeah, to an extent, but that doesn't officially count. The Rams still had 2, and that really had been the Bengals' ticket to success throughout this postseason. But the fact that the Rams were able to overcome that and still win this football game, it's really a testament to just how much more of a complete team they really were, and how much more Cincinnati needed to go their way in order for them to win this game.
Yeah, and I feel like the Bengals fans, I feel like still proud of their team. Because the Bengals were the young team, what were their core players, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, I feel like it was a very young team compared to the Rams with a lot of experienced players, Stafford, um, Odell Beckham Jr., Von Miller, all those players were very experienced and veterans. So I feel like the Rams knew was their probably one of their last shots with the core, player with their, with those players to get the title. The Bengals, I feel like they weren't expecting to make the Super Bowl run. But the only thing I would be afraid of is I'll call the Panthers 2015 effect, which you have a flashy young SEC quarterback and you get to the Super Bowl and you think, oh, we're going to go back. And the Panthers never did.
Yeah, I will say this though: the Panthers, they had an older Cam Newton at that point, and their defense really kind of fell apart afterwards, right? Because Josh Norman, he ended up leaving the Panthers a couple years after that. Luke Kuechly retired pretty shortly after that. Jonathan Stewart retired after that. Steve Smith retired after that. And because you got to think about it, that Panthers team didn't have the receiving core that this Bengals team's had. There wasn't no Jamar Chase. There was no T. Higgins. There was no Tyler Boyd. There was no Joe Mixon. Like, this offense would be perhaps the best of the entire league with a better offensive line. Like, it's really close to just being nearly complete. And we just got to see how the Bengals build up the offensive line. And they'll probably need to make some moves on the defense, especially the secondary. I mean, Eli Apple, with all the memes and stuff, I mean, it is true that he did get kind of burnt throughout the game, especially there at the end. So you probably want to get a better quarterback if you can, if you're the Bengals. But I do think compared to where the Panthers were, I think the Bengals still have a long way to go just because Burrow is so young. Jamar Chase is so young. But here's the caveat. You got to get that offensive line better so Burrow doesn't get hurt again. Because Burrow was definitely getting hurt again by the end of that game. Like, you could tell he wasn't 100% because he was getting pounded. He had 9 sacks in Nashville, had 7 sacks in this game. I mean, I think he got sacked over like 20, 21 times throughout the entire postseason. And, a quarterback, no matter how good they are, can't withstand that pounding. And what I'm kind of afraid of is he's going to turn into the next Andrew Luck. An amazing quarterback whose career is cut short because their team could not get them an offensive line to save their lives.
Yeah, it's a fair comparison. And they both play in the AFC.
Yeah, a very hard hitting conference. And he's in that very hard hitting division of the AFC North. Like, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland are not going to take it easy. Like, they are going to come after it next year. So it's it's not something that you can play around with. I mean, I agree with the choice to take Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. But this year you have to, with the picks that you have, get some offensive linemen or sign at least 1 or 2. Because if you could get the offensive line going, then this won't be your last chance. But you got to keep Joe Burrow healthy.
Yeah, because you saw how when Joe Burrow has a healthy season, what he can do. Because his rookie season, he got injured. So this was his full season as a Bengals quarterback, and he got to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, these two quarterbacks are definitely in far different places. For Matthew Stafford, I'd be curious to see if he can get back to another Super Bowl because he is older. And of all the rumors circulating around the Rams, will Aaron Donald retire? For example, will the Rams be able to get back to this position? We'll have to see where this team is after the draft, after free agency, because it's going to be really hard for them to be able to re-sign everyone with the cap that they have, just because they brought in all these big name guys for very low contracts. And I think those guys are going to want to get paid in this offseason because they prove they still can play. And it's just not a great recipe. But at the same time, you gotta like look at the NFC and think, all right, who's going to be your main contenders next year? Because Tampa Bay no longer has Tom Brady. Green Bay's probably not going to have Aaron Rodgers anymore. San
I don't
Francisco, we're
know.
not sure what they're going to do. Arizona is in chaos right now, potentially with Kyler Murray. Seattle, it sounds like they're going to keep Russell Wilson, so we'll see how they're able to rebuild them. But the NFC to me is kind of a mess. You know, the rest of the NFC South, New Orleans, they got a new coach. We'll see what they do. Atlanta still is a rebuild in progress. The NFC East, Dallas has talent, but do we really trust them to do anything? The rest of the NFC East is still really kind of in a rebuild. The Eagles don't really strike me as a team who can do much of anything. The Rams still might be the most talented team next year because the rest of the NFC is kind of a mess. And the NFC to me is the far weaker conference because the AFC, like I would take the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, the Titans, any of those teams to win the NFC. Perhaps even the Chargers right now to win the NFC next year. Just because I feel like the AFC is going to be so much more loaded next year with the potential talent over the NFC.
So do you want to take a too early predictions of playoff teams?
Well, I'm not going to do that yet. I want to see how free agency plays out. I'm just saying off the top of my head, if I had to say, all right, who is the definitive favorites in each conference? That there are, I think, several AFC teams that right now would be potential favorites, or at least one of the top two favorites in the NFC over any team in the NFC, because outside of the Rams and maybe the 49ers, we'll have to see what the Packers do. But I don't think they're going to be anywhere close to what they were this year. I think the Vikings have talent, but then again, can you really trust the Minnesota Vikings? I can't, because they're the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I do think it's a lot of improvement for a lot of NFC teams, and hopefully we'll see some more of those teams get it together.
I'll say my predictions for I feel like it's going to be Bills, Ravens, Titans, and the Chargers are going to win in the divisions. I believe. Yeah, the Ravens.
Lamar Jackson, we'll see how healthy he can be. I still think they're going to have a pretty decent defense. They got to get him some weapons, though. And then again, how much longer does Lamar Jackson have to be what he is?
Yeah, I think he's going to bounce back. That's what my prediction. And for the wild card, the other teams, I feel like it's going to be the Patriots, the Bengals, and the Chiefs. That's my predictions. And for the NFC, it's going to be, of course, Dallas Cowboys. I think they're still going to dominate the NFC East. I don't think the Eagles, the Washington Guardians, the Washington Commanders.
The Commanders, not the Guardians. The Washington
Guardians is the Cleveland News team. But
yeah, that's the Guardians of baseball.
Yeah. So I think the Cowboys still going to dominate the NFC East. I think the NFC North, I think the Packers are going to win, but I think the Bears are going to bounce back. I think, I think the Bears are going to bounce back, and, Justin Fields, I think, going to have a good season. I think the NFC South, the NFC South is going to be a big question mark because for the first time, Matt Ryan, still the best quarterback you can say because the Buccaneers don't have their quarterback. The Saints still, I feel like, recovering from Drew Brees' retirement. And the Panthers still, I don't think they trust Sam Darnold yet to, and I feel like they're still going to look for another quarterback. So I think the Falcons, I feel like, with Arthur Smith, I think they look promising for next year.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, it's extremely early just because we don't know what these teams are really going to look like. But if I had to guess right now, and these will all probably be wrong, AFC for my division winners, I probably would go. I'm still going to roll over the Chiefs in the AFC West. Not bet against Patrick Mahomes until I can see, because I think the Chargers are going to have a shot, but I got to see them do it. I got to see that that defense will have to get better, especially the rush defense. The rush defense was the worst in the NFL this year, and that's really a big reason why they didn't end up making the playoffs. Like if their rush defense is just a little bit better, that's a dark horse Super Bowl team, especially with that offense. But right now, I'm still going to go with the Chiefs. Bills in the AFC East. The Patriots are certainly going to have a shot, though. We'll see how Mac Jones progresses as a quarterback in the offseason. We'll see what moves they make in the offense. I think they got to get him maybe one or two big weapons. I think that would be huge for the Patriots. In the AFC South, definitely the Titans or Colts. Take your pick. We'll see what they do with their quarterbacks. Rumor is they might bring in Jimmy Garoppolo to Indy. And, if that happens, I think that Colts and Titans would be pretty evenly matched.
And speaking of the Colts quarterback, so do you think Carson Wentz is still going to be a Colts quarterback, or are they going to move off him? And if he does not stay in Indianapolis, do you think he has a space maybe in Denver, maybe in Pittsburgh, in New Orleans?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen to Carson Wentz is if Indianapolis decides they're going to move on from him, he'll be a backup somewhere. Because apparently there are rumors they might go and be a backups in some other places.
Or even the Patriots.
It could be that. I mean, there's rumors maybe the Titans are looking at him for a backup. Because, I mean, right now, outside of Ryan Tannehill, the next quarterback on the roster is Logan Woodside. So I would definitely take Carson Wentz as a backup because that's a definite upgrade there. But unless you're extremely desperate for a quarterback, I don't think there should be a lot of teams taking a chance on Carson Wentz. But the rest of that roster, though, is really good. The defense, especially that front seven, is very loaded. Jonathan Taylor, we know what he can do. As of right now, he may be the most talented running back. Of course, I want to still believe in Derrick Henry. We'll see how he recovers from those injury in the offseason. And if he get back to what he was. But we got to remember, running backs don't have as big of a shelf life in this league. And truly, the question is, what will Ryan Tannehill come out with next year? Because we know he does really well in the regular season. I anticipate he will come out and play well in the regular season. But next year, I think there's going to be a kind of an aura of tension because I think for an entire year, a lot of the Titans fan base is going to be thinking Ryan Tannehill threw away our shot with the 1 seed last year. And he isn't going to have he's going to have to wait until January again to get that narrative, off of his back. So we'll see if that affects his play throughout the regular season. I would still probably pick the Titans right now. Maybe that's a bit of a biased pick, but I think it'll be very close. Again, I mean, Titans, Colts, the past couple of years have been tight division races, and I don't see any way that's different. And I think the Texans and Jaguars are going to be in rebuilding mode. I think the Texans made a stupid move in firing David Coley for Lovie Smith. I don't agree with that at all. They were showing progress under Coley, and we'll see. And we'll see what they'll be able to do in their second season. The Jags, that they need a drama-free season next year, even if they only won 3, 4, 5 games. If they can stay out of the headlines, that's a success for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But who knows? Maybe Trevor Lawrence is the next Joe Burrow, and they're in the Super Bowl next year. That would just be insane. The AFC East. This is going to be a bit of a crazy one. Give me the Steelers. And here's why I say that. I think the Steelers are going to get a really, really good QB. I don't know who they're going to get, but I think they'll get a good quarterback. And here's the thing. Mike Tomlin is one of the top 5 coaches in the NFL. I trust Mike Tomlin. He got them in the playoffs this year with a guy that really couldn't throw past 20 yards and had to rely on Najee Harris as running back. They still have a very, very talented defense led by Minkah Fitzpatrick. If they can get a top shelf quarterback, which I think they have a chance of doing, Pittsburgh, to me, is the most talented roster in that division. Because Baltimore, they still have questions about their receivers and just talent around Lamar Jackson. Of course, they should get a lot of their running backs back next year, including J.K. Dobbins. But then again, with all the injuries they suffered, how good will they be in their recovery? That will remain to be seen. Cleveland was a mess this year. We'll see how they can cover. And Baker Mayfield has a ton of questions about him. And, of course, Odell Beckham going off to L.A. and playing the way he did raises even more questions. So I think right now, I still believe the Steelers are the most competent organization in that division. The Bengals were they a flash in the pan, or did they have staying power? We're going to find that out. But I think the Steelers with a top quarterback are more set up for success, considering they were still able to make the playoffs this year with Ben Roethlisberger, who was well past his prime.
No, yeah, and I was gonna say, I think Cleveland is a team that comes with most pressure in that division, even though they didn't make the playoffs. And I think the Bengals, I think they are still, the fans know they're still, kind of building up the team. Cleveland, I remember when Odell Beckham Jr. was traded to the Browns, everybody thought, oh, they're gonna go to the Super Bowl. They're gonna go to the Super Bowl, and they haven't even made to the AFC Championship yet, and they saw their in-state rival, making to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that really rubbed that fan base the wrong way, and seeing them lose to their former wide receiver, it's just, it's like, if it could happen for the Bengals, why can't it happen for the Browns? And I still think Kevin Stefanski's a really good coach. I think a lot of things happen this year out of his control. But Baker Mayfield's going to have to prove something next year. And the rest of the organization is that defense still has Myles Garrett. So that's a good foundation to start off with. But the secondary wasn't very good this year. And that's something they gotta address this offseason. And I really do think the Steelers are the best set for success because I trust that organization and their coach the most. So give me the Steelers in the AFC North. So I have the Chiefs, the Titans, the Steelers, and the Bills. My wild cards, I'll give me the Patriots, the Chargers. I really think the Chargers will be really, really good next year. And I think their defense will be good enough next year to give that offense the support it needs to win, to get to the postseason. And for spot 7, I'll give it to the Bengals. I really do. I do think they'll do enough with their offensive line, and Joe Burrow is good. So just clutch that they'll win enough games to find their way into the postseason. So, but there's so many teams that are in the hunt. Like the Colts are in the hunt. The Broncos potentially, if they are able to improve their quarterback position enough, could be in the hunt because I really like their defense. I really like what they've done with the running back position. Javonte Williams really came on strong this year. And, guys like Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton on the outside for the Broncos, too, are really talented. They just haven't shown it because the quarterback play has been subpar with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. So the Broncos have a really good core. They just need a better quarterback. So if they can figure that out, whether they draft one or try to sign one, like imagine if Aaron Rodgers goes to Denver. I mean, I don't know if that has really a high likelihood at this point, but I do think that Denver has a chance with a better quarterback. And don't forget about the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders made the playoffs this year too. Although I don't love their hire of Josh McDaniels, to be honest with you. I didn't. He wasn't that good in Denver. And I think the Raiders should have kept Rich Pacillia as their coach. So my AFC picks, once again, are Chiefs, Titans, Patriots, Bills, and Steelers for the division winners. And then wild card is Chargers, Bengals, and Patriots. So for the NFC.
And of course, a lot of things can change throughout the free agency. But I feel like you definitely there's going to be teams that are going to bounce back, and the teams that did not went to the playoffs, they're going to go back.
Right, and that's why it's so hard right now because I don't know what the teams are going to look like. But so this is just since we kind of dove off into this. Right now, off the top of my head, who would I pick? So NFC, this is where it's going to get hard. I'll start off with probably the easiest one. I think the Rams probably repeat as the West. I think the Niners certainly have a shot, and then with a better quarterback, the Niners could overtake the Rams. I think theirs are the two main contenders. Of course, the Seahawks. If Russell Wilson's completely healthy, they're going to have a chance, but they got some rebuilding they got to do. That defense is no longer the Legion of Boom. They're going to have to rebuild that. You still got talent at the wide receiver position. You still have talent at running backs, but the offensive line is still abysmal. So you got to rebuild that. But if you can do some rebuilding on that really quickly, you can make another run with Russell Wilson. And the Cardinals, offense is still really good. The defense has a lot of really nice pieces, but I don't trust Cliff Kingsbury, and that's why I'm not gonna consider him really a threat here because as loaded as this division is, you got to be able to play a full 18-week season. And Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals have not proven they can. They fall apart every second half of the season. So right now, I'd pick the Rams. In the NFC East, Dallas Cowboys. Let's just put chalk. I don't really know what they need, right? Because they have great young defensive talent. They have Micah Parsons, you have Trayvon Diggs, amongst other great players on that defense. You got Dak Prescott, who's a really good QB. He's not a great quarterback, though. At times, he looked great. But in the biggest moments, he did not look great.
I mean, he was 6-0 in division, games, but 6-5 against everybody else. And
right, because the NFC East sucks. That's why he was 6-0 against that division.
Yeah, of course. So playing division games prop him up, but he couldn't win, especially a game against the 49ers. I felt like that was the game that should have been Dak Prescott big game, at home versus a team that, did not, it didn't look as good as they, ended up showing. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of question marks for the Cowboys this year. Are they going to be able to be better, not only in division play, but, in the overall play, especially in the postseason?
Right. And I don't know who else really is going to have a shot at them. In the Eagles, I know they made the playoffs this year, but I just don't trust Jalen Hurts long term as a legit NFL option. Because that their rushing offense was really good, but that isn't going to win a Super Bowl. You got to be able to throw the ball in this league, and to win a division, you got to be able to throw the ball in this league. And the Giants and the Commanders, they got some rebuilding. The Commanders are further along than the Giants, but their quarterback situation is really dire. I think they're going to go for rookie, whether that's Matt Corral or if that's a guy like Kenny Pickett or even Malik Willis from Liberty. I think they're probably going to ride with a rookie this year, at least by the end of the year, and build up from there with the new Commanders nickname. NFC South, wild card. I don't know who the Bucs are going to have as quarterback. They still got a lot of talent on that team, though. The Saints, I would assume Jameis Winston's going to get another shot. He was playing really well, but Sean Payton isn't there anymore.
Figure out who's the next head coach.
Right. So I don't, because I don't think they've hired one yet, if I'm correct. So let's see here. Oh no, they just promoted Dennis Allen, their DC. So,
but still, he's still a big question mark.
Right. So it's just a giant question mark. And also Alvin Kamara. Well, how does his legal situation from Las Vegas wrap up? I think he'll probably be fine, maybe, but who knows? Hopefully he won't get blacklisted out of the league. Atlanta, Kyle Pitts is nice, but will Calvin Ridley be back on the field after his absence? Who's your quarterback going to be? Are you going to have a defense? Those are legit questions. And the Panthers, once again, gotta find a quarterback. And can Christian McCaffrey be healthy? Christian McCaffrey can't stay healthy to save his life anymore. So I'd probably go with the Bucs again. That's because they probably have the most talent, and they'll probably find a at least somewhat decent replacement for Tom Brady. But you're not going to replace Tom Brady. And you're not going to be a Super Bowl contender without Tom Brady. But I think you'll still be okay without him. So give me the Bucs. If Sean Payton were still the Saints coach, I'd pick the Saints.
And the big question for the Buccaneers, should you go experienced quarterback or should you go? Do you know what interesting move by Buccaneers if they get Jimmy Garoppolo? How ironic would it have been?
Yeah, that would be very ironic. And honestly, Jimmy Garoppolo would win the division. I think they would win that division with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I think he'll fit him well. I think he can be productive for the Bucs, but it would be ironic because he'll be he'll be taking over Brady.
I will say, though, thinking about it, I don't know how well he fits into the Bruce Arians style, though. Because Bruce Arians has his quarterback throw the ball down the field a ton. And I think Garoppolo maybe set himself up for failure with that offense. But who knows, right? So I've got the Cowboys, the Bucks, the Rams. Got to choose the North. Give me the Vikings. Why not? I think the Packers are going to fall apart. They're not going to be able to re-sign a lot of their pieces. Aaron Rodgers is likely not going to be there anymore. So I think the best pieces left. I think the Bears, they got to do some rebuilding on offense, especially. I know they have Drew Montgomery, who's a nice running back. They got Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney, who are nice receivers. Justin Fields has potential, but he's got a ways to go. Detroit has just so much rebuilding they got to do, but I like their coach a lot. So I think if they give Dan Campbell some time, he can rebuild the Lions. But I think the Vikings are the most ready. They needed that head coaching change. They're going to get some pieces back on defense who were injured this year, and they need to get some pieces. But I like Kirk Cousins as a quarterback. I think he's highly underrated. And they have some very good pieces in, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. You got Dalvin Cook in the backfield. Give me the Vikings to win the NFC North. I think they are the best positioned, potentially if the Packers truly collapse, which I think they're going to. And then for my wild cards, probably just the entire NFC West. If I'm going to be honest with you, get the Niners, the Rams, and the Cardinals. If I had to take out one of those teams, probably the Cardinals, and I don't even know who would be my seventh team. Maybe the Saints, maybe the Eagles.
Packers. I think the Packers.
Maybe the Packers. Whatever. It'll be a very weak 7 seed. So that's how I see it playing out. At least before we have the draft and free agency to play out.
It's our too early NFL prediction.
Way too early NFL predictions.
Way too early NFL.
It's like the guys who predict the college football season the day after the national title. I mean, that's what we're doing, is trying to predict next season the day after the Super Bowl, basically. And that's basically impossible. So don't put any money on any of our predictions. But I'll be very curious to see, and I'm not even going to try to even pick a Super Bowl winner out of all that. So
I'll wait until the big before the first game, because I have a good tracking record of that.
Right. He did call the Bucks. So yeah.
But so let's move on to the Vols. What a win,
Vols, baby. Yeah. But,
I really wish I was at Thompson Bowl Arena. I mean, it reminded me when the Vols won Kentucky. I think it was 2017. When
17, 19. I mean, we've beaten them a ton. I mean, Brook Barnes is 9-7 against Kentucky. I mean, you realize the previous 6 coaches for the Vols won 9 games total against Kentucky. And that includes Bruce Pearl. But Rick Barnes himself has won 9 games.
Yeah, I remember January 25th, 2017. Kentucky was the number 6 team in the country, and the Vols not even ranked, and they won. And with Grant Williams, Jordan Bowden, and Schofield, and that place was electric. And I feel like after that game, the Vols kind of went on to kind of remain this kind of big power. And yesterday they cement that. They really won big against the 4th ranked Kentucky.
Yeah, because I remember that game, because that in a way kind of started the ascent of Tennessee basketball in terms of being able to be competitive with these top teams. Because even though the team wasn't necessarily that good that year, that was the 2016-2017 year, that team had a young Grant Williams, a young Admiral Schofield. And that team was a team that really took off the year afterwards. And it really, that game in many respects was the beginning of the modern, well, not really a dynasty, because you got to win titles to win a dynasty, but the modern Tennessee basketball renaissance. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like the big takeaway last night is how much Calipari really Rick Barnes get on his nerves. He was clearly could see how tense he was, how nervous he was.
Oh yeah, Calipari definitely became uncharacteristically unglued during that game, which is kind of surprising, because you feel like for a guy who's been there a long time, who's won a national championship, has a lot of respect for Rick Barnes, that you don't think he would come that unglued, even though he has a little bit of a history of doing so, and he is a bit of a cheat. But yeah, that Kentucky team, they just got, I think, really intimidated by the crowd. It reminded me a lot of the 2019 game. I remember when they came down to TBA and just got absolutely smashed. It was like 72-52. I was in the crowd for that game. It was awesome. But I mean, just what can you say about the Vols? I mean, this was a team. I mean, this has been a really weird team because for a while it felt like their record and their metrics were better than they actually were, because they've been in the top 15 in KenPom and the net rankings all year. Like, they've been one of the best teams, but it hasn't felt like it. Like, the offense really struggled at times. But I really do think that Rick Barnes is doing stuff that he's never really done well at Tennessee. He's adjusting the offense. He is finding different combinations. And it starts with Zakai Ziegler. He's 5'3" off the bench, from New York City. No one else was recruiting him. This guy was like living from house to house last year, having to sneak on to Long Island train rides to make basketball practice. And now he is one of the top freshmen in not just SEC, but the country. I mean, he is electric, and he's become a fan favorite here in Tennessee. Of course, he's playing next to Kenny Chandler, a 5-star point guard. Everyone wanted him, but he came to Tennessee from Memphis. And, he's been a little shaky at times, but definitely when he's on, he's the best player on the team. He has the most potential, most pro NBA potential. What's beautiful is some of the other players, right? Santiago Vescovi, or Vescovi, actually. Let me rephrase that.
Vescovi.
Yeah, however you say it. From Argentina, he's gotten better each and every single year, and now he's a sharp killer. And what's really most impressive, right? Because everyone thinks of Santiago Vescovi as a 3-point shooter, a guy who can pass the ball. He is a really good rebounder as a guard. He will fight for the boards. And those 3 guards are just so effective and deadly together. And then, of course, you got Josiah Jordan James, who he does a bit of everything. He's a bigger guy. He can play the 4. And he's very effective in his role. He could shoot threes. He could shoot mid-range jumpers. Can get to the rim. And another former 5-star, and he's really, I think, starting to come to his own. And really, his strength to me is his defense. He's a great defender. And then we have a rotating series of bigs. Of course, John Fulkerson, 6-year big, has really struggled at times this year, but I think he's starting to figure out his role once again on this team, because his ceiling isn't as high as some of the other players, but he plays with as much heart as any of them. And then really the guys I want to shout out, Brandon Huntley Hatfield and Jonas Idu, 2 freshmen who are very, very talented bigs. They had huge contributions. Huntley Hatfield can shoot very well for a big. He can shoot threes, can shoot from the outside. And Jonas Idu, this dude had not played that much this season, but last night against Oscar Shibwe, who to me should be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, he absolutely held his own. 5.7 or 7 points, 5 rebounds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a ton in that game. Big momentum-changing rebounds for Jonas Idu, and this guy's going to be someone to watch. And where does this ride go for the Vols? I don't know. Because Rick Barnes' teams have tended not to perform as well in March, and that's something I'm keeping in mind. But I will say this, compared to some of the other teams he's had, those teams were kind of faltering a little bit in late February into March, and they probably didn't do as well in the postseason because of it. Last year's team was not good at all by the end of the season. Like, that team was bad. Well, not bad, but they were really bad at times, and we saw what happened against Oregon State. This team's different. This team just feels different. They're, as they say, they're pushing P. And I'm probably the most excited I've been about Tennessee basketball since the Grant Admiral days. I'm not saying they're making the Final Four or anything because we won't know because you can't predict that. March Madness is insane. But I'm going to say as an alum, I am very proud of how this team has grown, how they've just how they compete. There's times this year where it was nearly impossible to watch them, like Texas Tech and Texas, for example. Those two games, the offense couldn't hit anything. It was horrible basketball to watch. But they clearly have learned from every loss because you got to remember the first time that Kentucky and Tennessee played, Kentucky scored 107 points and shot like 70% from the field. Yesterday, they only scored 63 and shot 33%. So this team's clearly a lot better. And they got a chance. Right now, Lone already has them as a free seed. They still got 2 games against Arkansas and Auburn. So some high-quality wins are still out there. And if you can win more of those games, you can win 2 to 3 of those, you could play your way to a 2 seed. I think a 1 seed is probably out of the question, but 2 seed I think is very attainable if you win these games. So I think that should be the goal right now, getting a 2 or 3 seed. You're 2 games behind Auburn for the regular season title, so you're going to need them to lose an extra game and beat them to have a shot at that. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens from here on out because Rick Barnes has got these guys playing well, and you can tell these guys play for one another. They play hard, and this fan base is bought in.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems an electric. Fans were lining up, like student, section fans were like lining up like 2 or 3, like 4 hours before they.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember doing that myself back in the day, and they were doing this on a Tuesday, when people are doing stuff, not a Saturday. So it's once again, it's a shame that SEC put that on a Tuesday and not a Saturday, but it still sounded like a Saturday game. Thompson-Boling Arena against Kentucky is as good of a college basketball environment as anywhere. I'll take it against Cameron Indoor, Allen Fieldhouse, Rupp Arena, whatever basketball environment you want to throw at me. I will take Thompson-Boling Arena over any of them.
Oh yeah, I miss being there, especially on big games, and it really gave me chills watching last night, and now only a month, less than a month away from SEC championship, and March Madness approaching. Definitely going to talk more college basketball because I think it's as tight as in ever. I feel like this season.
Oh yeah, like I don't know if you can say there's any one particular favorite, because obviously Gonzaga, they're the number 1 team right now, but you can't trust Gonzaga, because they don't play anyone in their conference schedule. They've played 8 quad 1 games. By the end of this season, the regular season, the Vols will have played 14 quad 1 games. They're going to play twice the amount of hard, top tier teams as Gonzaga or Arizona. Even Arizona's 5-2 against quad 1 teams. One of those 2 losses was to Tennessee. So Tennessee has played an extremely hard schedule, and clearly every single big loss they've had, they've turned into a positive experience. They turned into positive momentum. So I'm extremely excited. Extremely excited to see where the rest of the season goes. Not going to get my head of myself though, because it's really hard to win a national championship. But yeah, I'm excited.
So let's finish up with some Major League Baseball talks, because it looks like the light at the end of the tunnel is still far ahead. Both sides still throwing proposals, but it doesn't seem that they're going to reach a deal sometime soon.
Yeah, and that's just a shame, because it feels like the MLB was actually getting some positive momentum. Like last year was a great season. I'm not just saying that because the Braves won the World Series, but because it legit was a good season. Like you finally got full stadiums back. You're getting past the whole COVID situation. You can't afford another shutdown because baseball is no longer the American pastime anyway. Football is. But do you really want to throw it even further back? Do you want the baseball as we know it to be irrelevant? And the discussions over minor league baseball and trying to house all the players and all that, and that's something they really got to consider because these minor league players don't make anything. That like they make nothing, and they really should be trying to compensate these players because the major leagues make more than enough to be able to take care of the minor leaguers because these are going to be your future players. But
And I feel like it's a kind of like camaraderie. It's like, hey, I've been there. I bet I imagine all the Major League Baseball players were minor league players at some point. So they got to remember how awful it was for them. So they'd be like, hey, I want to improve the conditions for those players because I was one of them.
right, and I think the players should be fighting for their other players. And the idea that the MLB wants to limit the amount of times a player can be optioned back down is insane. I mean, the team should be able to do whatever it wants with its players. If they need a guy from AAA to come up for a few days, they need him to come up for a few days. If you need a guy to go back down for a few games, send him back down for a few games. It should not be limited, and it's gonna kill the smaller teams. Like here in Chattanooga, it's gonna kill the Lookouts, which would be horrible for our local economy. It's gonna kill the future Knoxville Smokies if they do stuff like that. That they're not thinking beyond the 30 MLB teams that exist. Like the MLB is responsible for virtually every major metropolitan area in the United States, for every single baseball team out there. And it's
Because
insane.
and also the minor league, I feel like has a way more impact in their communities than I think Major League Baseball play teams have. So they got to think. And where is the minor league baseball commissioner or the owners of those teams? I
Yeah,
feel
but the
like
problem is really not a commissioner of minor league baseball. I mean, you have your minor league baseball, but like every individual league has more say so over any organization, and the parent organizations of the minor league teams than what the MLILB does.
yeah, and I see here in Brazil how it's not easy for the little teams to get any say in comparison to big teams with regarding of getting their interest in terms of long term and especially financial like part of it. But they are
Yeah.
still kind of hostage in that situation because minor league baseball needs Major League Baseball to fill their roster because imagine if there's no first of all, I feel like I love the system where like you have like the Cubs players playing for the Smokies. Like you get fans to the stands to watch future, like not all of them, but some a part of those players that you're watching are going to be Major League Baseball players. So if that connection stops, minor league baseball are going to have to get players and develop their own league, become like a
Right.
kind of separated from Major League Baseball. And Corinthians
Yeah, I
for
wonder too. Could this be like a revival for college baseball? 'Cause, if there's no minor league baseball, then it's going to force some people to go play college that otherwise wouldn't have, because they would have rather gone and played to get paid and minor league.
yeah,
And I do think college baseball is starting to get more popular. And it may be relative just because it got a lot more popular in Tennessee last year, or at least in Knoxville. But I really do think if you like, and I saw more chatter about like the College World Series, about just about college baseball in general last year than I kind of saw ever before. And I know I really wasn't paying as much attention before, but I don't recall anyone talking about college baseball until last year. But it's certainly in a position, especially with expanded streaming, where if minor league baseball falls apart, college baseball is right there.
yeah, and you have the connectivity with your you know still big brands in college sports like Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, or even Ohio State and Michigan. You still want to represent those schools. So if there's no minor league baseball, college baseball is so funny. Like it looks like Major League Baseball wants to prop up college baseball the way they never did, And you look the NBA, they're doing the opposite. Like they're kind of promoting their minor league, with the G League, and kind of demoting college basketball.
Well, I think if you're baseball, I think you absolutely should. Because here's the thing: baseball superstars, for the most part, are not that recognizable. Like I think a Shohei Ohtani and a Ronald Acuna Jr. are going to be the two most recognizable faces you're going to have. Excuse me, for a while. And as I said, bring up the example of Mike Trout. Can you tell me what Mike Trout looks like? I can't tell you what Mike Trout looks like. Because the MLB didn't advertise him well enough. So it's a difficult position. But if you get college baseball to be big, then you can kind of start to build up a guy. Like Joe Burrow was already a celebrity before he went to the NFL because of what he was doing at LSU. And now he's a superstar because he already was a star at LSU. Tua was a huge star coming out of Alabama. And, I know he hasn't played amazing in Miami, but he's still well known. But baseball, outside of if you're a diehard, like I could tell you some of the players off of Tennessee's team. Like I could tell you about Chad Dallas. I could tell you about some of our other players. But I couldn't tell you anybody off of like Oregon State's team. It's a difficult situation, and they got to find ways to get their fans more connected with their young stars early because it's really hard to do that right now.
Yeah, that's true. And quick update: Corinthians 2-0 in the second half. They have a penalty to shoot. They might score their third goal of the night with William, former Chelsea player.
Mm-hmm.
And but before we move on,
for them.
yeah, but and before we move on to Brazilian topics, there was Daytona race.
Daytona. Yeah. So if you've ever played the Sega game, you know that feeling. But Daytona 500 this week, which means NASCAR is officially back. Not really gonna make a prediction here, just because it's Daytona. It's wild. Probably a Ford will win it. So if I had to give out a name, I'm trying to think. Well, Ryan Blaney won the last race at Daytona. I mean, he definitely could win it. Although there's a part of me that's thinking Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has never won the Daytona 500. It's pretty much the only thing he's never won as a NASCAR driver. Like, he has multiple championships. He's won basically every other race, but he's never won the 500. Kind of Dale Earnhardt-esque. If you're familiar with the story of Dale Earnhardt, he won everything under the sun except for the Daytona 500. But he did finally win it in 1998 after 20 years. So, definitely going to be interesting to watch. I just hope it's on time. Hopefully there's no weather issues. The last 3 Daytona 500s have all had weather issues. So I just want this one to go off without a hitch. The new car, the Gen 7, will be featured in its first official race. So that'll be interesting to see how that races. Is it going to be a big pack racing? Is it going to be tandem drafting? Who knows, right? And what's really kind of going to be sketchy throughout the week here is because of part shortages, none of the teams have a backup car. So if you crash it at all in practice or in the Thursday dual races, which are basically the qualifying races, are these teams going to be able to race Sunday if you crash early? So these teams are going to have to be super duper careful, which is really hard at Daytona because Gus, about the crashes that typically occur at like Daytona and Talladega with the super speedway racing. That's a hard ask. So these guys are going to have to be really calm and really patient compared to how they normally are in speed weeks, and at least get your car to Sunday and save the aggression for probably the last 50 laps of the Grand American Race. So it's going to be fascinating to see how these guys manage that throughout the week. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great race. Hopefully better than last year's. I thought last year's was kind of subpar just because they had an early crash, which kind of scared everyone to really do anything until the end, and then we had another huge crash. So crashes are inevitable, but I actually want to see some racing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Daytona is such an iconic racetrack, and it's always after the Super Bowl. So it's the transition from football to the spring sport, which like racing and baseball should be. But I'm excited as well. Moving on to Brazilian topics. Currently, right now, Corinthians scored that penalty 3-0. And big question because Corinthians still looking for a head coach after they fired Silvinho, but the interim head coach, Fernando Fern, oh my god, I even forgot his name. The interim head coach, Fernando. Oh my god, I forgot his name. But still, like Fernando Lazaro. Fernando Lazaro. He won 3 games in a row. He brought Corinthians, you know, back into playing really good game. I mean, I've been watching the game right now, and Corinthians playing solid, fast, really good quality. All the good players in sync. Corinthians currently right now holds the best, overall, the best team in the Paulista Championship. So it plays a question: should you trust your interim head coach or go after kind of like a European or a veteran head coach? That's a big question. Of course, as long I feel like he's playing well because kind of the veteran players kind of like helping him make the team, and has been working as well. But Corinthians doesn't fully trust him because Corinthians gonna play Libertadores, and that's a more tough tournament. So I don't know if he is going to keep being. I feel like Fernando Lazaro in the same position as the Las Vegas Raiders head coach, of course, with different circumstances, but still, like you take over middle of the season and you do really well. So what do you do? That's the big question Corinthians have right now. Currently winning 3-0. Um, Palmeiras went to the FIFA Club World Cup final, lost in overtime to Chelsea. I think it was an overall good game. Palmeiras played the way they always play in counterattack, reactive, kind of defense, prioritizing the defense and kind of, trying to get a goal off a counterattack. The Chelsea scored first, with Lukaku, and then Palmeiras tied with a penalty scored by Rafael Veiga after Thiago Silva put the hand in the ball. But then with 4 minutes remaining into the second half of the overtime, Lua touched the ball with his hand. The VAR caught it, and the Chelsea scored a winning goal to win their first ever FIFA Club World Cup. I think the first ever by a club from London, because prior to that, only Man United and Liverpool, and I believe Nottingham Forest won. So it was the first time ever a team from London won the FIFA Club World Cup, because Arsenal never played, Tottenham never played, and Chelsea lost in 2012. But congratulations to Chelsea and Palmeiras. I'm going to get to my hot take, but I feel like they should be proud. They still have a long season to go. They already won 2-0 today versus Ferroviaria. They play really well. They still showing they have a viable team, even playing the reserve today, kind of, giving a rest to the starters from Saturday's game. But I think Palmeiras still heavily favored to win. Not all, but they're still a big team this season. I think they're heavily favored to win the state championship, the Brazilian championship, get the three Libertadores in a row. Because, only Sao Paulo won twice in a row, and they lost the third final. So if Palmeiras won 3 times in a row, it will be the first time ever a Brazilian team will ever do that, because Pelé and Santos won back-to-back 62-63. Sao Paulo won back-to-back 92-93. But then there was never a team that won back-to-back Libertadores. Palmeiras could be the first ever. The three-peat. I think they have a legitimate shot. They looks like they're not going to lose any players due to free agency. So, they only have to. They really need to find a good striker, a really good, viable striker. That's
because I did watch some of the highlights of that Palmeiras Chelsea game. So obviously I didn't get to see like the full back and forth because I couldn't really find it anywhere. Yeah. But it did seem like that, at least from what I was able to gather, that It was a pretty evenly matched game, mostly played in the midfield. And, at the end of the day, you're right. You got to be able to get past that final line of defense for Chelsea. But another thing, too, I want to point out, too, about the fans is just from the clips I was able to gather, that place was rocking over there. And what was it, Abu Dhabi? Like they traveled all across the world. And they seem to be louder than Chelsea fans.
Oh yeah,
By
Palmeiras
far.
fans dominated because they really wanted to win that tournament. I feel like it was a whole different vibe. Of course, last year there was no fans, kind of because we were still like in heavy COVID phase. But now a lot of Palmeiras fans were able to go, and they took over. It was a lot of a good vibe, and even back
Right.
home, and Palmeiras came back. Palmeiras fans were like shouting names for support. Even the player Luan, who kind of put the hand in the ball and commit the penalty, he was still cheered on. He was still like
Right.
Palmeiras fans were like giving him support.
So do you think that game goes to penalty kicks if that doesn't happen?
Yes, but and a lot of pundits also point out the problem was if that game went to penalty shootouts, a lot of Palmeiras good players were already subbed, so it looked like it was a big risk. But I think Palmeiras, the thing is, for the 90 minutes, Palmeiras are ready to play. They have the physicality, but I don't think they have enough stamina to finish the 120 minutes. Of course, it was a VAR penalty. It was a casualty that could have happened to Chelsea. And we're saying, oh, Palmeiras did perfectly. But I feel like it was, evenly matched. And of course, I think Chelsea is probably right now not the best European team at the time. I would say City, PSG, Bayern Munich are the best three European teams, but they were European champions. So when you play that tough game against the European champions, it shows that you're in the right way, in the right track. But of course, all the anti-Palmeiras fans rejoice because the music lives on. Palmeiras don't have a world champs. Palmeiras don't have a world champs. And now they updated the music since they won the Copinha. They had twice relegated, don't have a world champs. Palmeiras não tem mundial. Palmeiras não tem mundial. Bi rebaixado não tem mundial. Bi rebaixado não tem mundial.
Well, it's good to know the memes live on down in Brazil.
Yeah, that was everyone was saying that Chelsea did a big favor for Brazil by keeping the meme alive because
hey, if you beat Chelsea, I mean, no one can tell you anything for like a decade.
Yeah, like because if they'll be the last, because if this is kind of like the last soccer meme ever, so everybody was nervous because like, oh my god, Palmeiras gonna win, the end of the meme, but now the meme lives on. And so funny, I just saw clips from Corinthians Stadium and they carry Chelsea flags and Chelsea t-shirts and but of course Palmeiras fans said, oh, all your anti-Palmeiras fans, you can still keep cheering against us. Palmeiras is still fighting for titles, and but the meme lives on.
I mean, it sounds kind of sad though to me. Like you're so worried that like you're out here rooting like against a fellow country because like just beating any Brazilian team beating Chelsea to me is just a massive deal. Like I mean, I'm not, and I'll say this, as a Tennessee guy, I'm not an SEC guy. Like I don't root for Alabama, I don't root for Georgia when they play teams from outside the SEC, right? But that's because SEC is already the best conference. Like there's nothing that Tennessee gains. But like Cincinnati, when they were playing Alabama, like if I were like an SMU, a Houston, UCF fan, I would have been diehard rooting for Cincinnati in that game because Cincinnati wins, that raises the rest of your profiles. And for Brazil, to me, if Palmeiras won, that raises Santos, that raises
Corinthians,
and everyone else.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of like getting the same analogy you did. I don't think Arsenal, Tottenham fans were like cheering for Palmeiras, cheering for, but but still, I feel like Palmeiras fans, they their team did the best they could. Of course, some questioning Abel's tactics to be a lot of defense and a lot of the speed of strikers that kind of let them be exhausted by extra time and they need to be subbed. But at the end of the day, you you play hard with the European champions. You're in the right track. Palmeiras still be for me a feared team. Still going to compete with Flamengo and Atlético Mineiro. They're still the big three teams in Brazil this year, and they did the best they could. I was hoping Palmeiras would win. As a sports journalist and as a sports fan, I was rooting for them. I wanted them to win, to have another Brazilian team being the world champions. But of course, I also happy as a Corinthians fan. The meme lives on, and Palmeiras, and still don't have a world champion. Even they claim the 1951 title, it's still very questionable. It wasn't official. It's like those titles in college football where it's like it's the claim title, but it's not official.
Oh yeah, like every Alabama title before like 1990.
Yeah, in Palmeiras did that with the 1951 because it was like a tournament with teams from all over the world 1 year after the 1950 World Cup in Brazil. So you can say you won a big deal, and it was like you can say it was like, oh, you won a world title because there was no kind of world title tournament back then, and it was the best team, but it was still doesn't feel official. But
Right.
now the big question is counted or not? I think it's a silly debate. Palmeiras fans are going to hold to that. Non-Palmeiras fans are going to just say it doesn't count. 51 it's a drink, it's not a title, and it's a silly debate, at least for me. But of course, fans lives for those debates.
Oh yeah, that's what yeah gives some people guys like us something to talk about.
Yeah. And just to wrap up, Paulie style, Saturday is going to be a big derby game for Campinas. Guarani and Ponte Preta, both teams lost today. So their coaches are on a hot seat. And, the game stops Campinas, which is the second largest city in Sao Paulo and one of the largest cities in Brazil. I'll be there broadcasting. I can't wait because those fans hate each other. Those teams hate each other. And it's so funny. Like, when you announce a result from a rival, like, in Alabama 20, Florida 13, like you announce
Yeah.
other scores. When Guarani does that, they don't call Ponte Preta. They just call the acronym AAPP and vice versa. So they don't even say their rival's name when they announce their result in the stadium. So see how tough their rivalry is. And I'm excited to watch them play on Saturday. I'm going to broadcast for Vida Nova FM radio here in Americana. And, it's like it's Tennessee, Florida, or I'll say like a Texas, Oklahoma kind of rivalry. It's big, it's massive, it stops the city of Campinas.
Oh yeah,
It just it's just
it sounds like
sad that
it's an amazing tournament.
no, it's just sad that only Guarani fans are able to attend the game because of the home team, home crowd rules, which it wasn't stated like in 2018, which all on like big rivalry games in the state of São Paulo, only the home fans are allowed to watch the game. I think it's sad. It takes all the magic of the game, but still, it's a big game. I'll be looking forward to watch on Saturday, and finish up my Brazilian topics with a hot take that I said Palmeiras fans should be proud of their team. I feel like Palmeiras was did a great tournament, winning the semifinal, which is not always easy. Palmeiras last year lost, Atlético Mineiro in 2013 lost, Internacional in 2010 lost. So getting to the final today is already a big deal. And they went all the way to extra time with a European champion, which was, I feel like, something they should be proud of. Of course, they still don't have the title yet, and They wish to get the memes over it and want this, something historical. But they still should be proud of Abel Ferreira. For me, is one of the best coaches, not only in Brazil but in the world. I not be surprised in the next few months he'll be hired by a team from Portugal or even other, mid-level European team because he's done a phenomenal job in Palmeiras. So Palmeiras fans should be proud of their team, and they're still gonna fight for all the titles this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be a fun end to those state tournaments. All right. It's time for some hot takes. We're going to wrap this thing up. Who wants to go first?
No, I just did mine.
Oh, yeah. All right. So I'll wrap up with mine. So my hot take is about LeBron James. It's actually kind of one, though, in favor of LeBron James. A lot of hot takes are against LeBron James. This one's in favor. So the other night against the Golden State Warriors, he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most total points in NBA history. Now, this is total points, not all-time points, because all-time points is still to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. LeBron James still has to score about 2,000 more points in the regular season to overcome this. And I understand that there are two separate categories, and they both deserve to exist. But what was weird to me is how underplayed the NBA media talked about this. Like, I only ever saw this online. Like, during the broadcast of Warriors-Lakers, which was an ABC Saturday Night Showcase game, how do you not bring this up constantly throughout the broadcast? And I know you don't want to be obnoxious with it, but they never brought it up once. It's just like, even the past mentioning, LeBron James has set the all-time total points record. That's not an insignificant accomplishment. And, I don't know if I explained it, but the all-time total points is regular season and playoffs, which to me is pretty important. Like, playoffs are what make or break legacies in the NBA. I don't watch much of the NBA until the playoffs, to be honest with you. And it's just kind of weird that the NBA, especially for one of your top 5 most iconic players ever in LeBron James, you don't make more of a big deal about that. It's just really weird to me. I feel like there should have been a big monumental moment for the NBA that they didn't really comment on. I mean, especially when they just really made a big deal about Steph Curry setting the all-time three-pointer record, which that's important, a huge accomplishment, and they should have. But they should have also given LeBron the same treatment. Of course, I believe inevitably he will pass Kareem. He only has 2,000 points to do so. He'll be able to do that. He's still an insane player even at his age. I believe he's 36 now. Is he? So he'll get his moment in the sun, but it should have also been this past Saturday for this particular record. It was weird how underplayed the NBA media play this, and I understand the NBA itself wants to prioritize the all-time regular season record, but to me, this is just as important, if not more impressive.
I totally agree with you, Nick, and I feel like it's just people are like it's a little bit of LeBron fatigue, especially how much he has been in the media not only for sports accomplishments, but outside with more social and political issues. But still, he is he should deserve praise. He should be recognized by this huge accomplishment. And I feel like NBA media should prop him up more. He's still a star. Everybody is trying to find the next LeBron, but LeBron's still playing to a level that he is one of the best. So I think he should be praised.
Yeah, but definitely his goal, I think at this point, is try to play long enough to where he gets to play alongside his son. Because he stated he wants to play along Bronny, who is looking at Tennessee potentially for his 1 year of college. Could you imagine that? LeBron James Jr. in Knoxville. And it was crazy as some people don't want him to come because they hate his father's politics. But, like, I could care less about that. Do you think about all the top players that would come play with LeBron James Jr.? Like, wherever he goes, other top players are going to go because that's LeBron James Jr. You're going to get all the airtime in the world. Who gives a crap what his father's politics are? His father could be a staunch communist for all I could care. And I want him to come to Knoxville because that brings you unprecedented attention and
And
talent to come
also,
along with it.
he's a phenomenal high school player. Like, not
Yeah.
only because of his dad, he has an accomplishment on his own. And of course, it's going to be a one and done. Don't kid yourself.
Oh yeah, of course. And the players will bring with you, but still, you'd be loaded. You'd be as loaded as you'd ever be in college basketball. I mean, I seriously doubt they'll ultimately end up at Tennessee. But anyone who's trying to say, "Oh, I don't want him because I hate LeBron," you're just silly. And I don't know, you might want to go listen to Clay Travis some more. I guess if you feel that way, but it would be an incredible business. I'm just telling you right now, it would be.
Just to wrap up the show, Corinthians just won 3-0 versus San Bernardo. So it was a good performance by Corinthians. And, just wrap up the show with that information. And thanks for listening and watching Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports, episode 17.
Yeah, episode 16. And when we come back next week, it'll be our first episode, really, I guess, without any football. So, I probably will talk about the Daytona 500 some. Be an interesting race to recap and whatever else the sports world has to offer us, because we're now truly in a different world. But at least in America, there are other sports to talk about. Maybe we'll have Major League Baseball again next week, but who knows?
And Major League Soccer as well. I mean, there's the CONCACAF Champions League and much more for next week. For Nicholas Hill in beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, I'm Gustavo Tomazeli in amazing Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Thanks for listening and good week. The black keep the funky fresh, y'all. And we won't stop until we get y'all.